Hey Grias, welcome back to Lex Gria's podcast. I'm your host Alexis, and tonight we are talking about organic versus GMO. And what is the big deal? I'm here to tell you. So, have we ever found ourselves in the grocery stores, especially in the produce aisle, and we're like looking at these vegetables? Some have different price range from maybe 79 cents to maybe 99 cents, and then others have like 1.99 to 2.99 or even 3.99. And we're just like, okay, a fruit should be a fruit. Why is there a price difference? So here is where I am about to tell you the difference in regards of these products. So one is considered organic and the other one is GMO. And what is GMO? It is a genetically modified organism or living organism that has their genes altered in some way, also known as bioengineering. So we can be talking about an animal, bacteria, but today it can be found in most of our foods that we eat on a day-to-day basis. So this is in regards of fruits and veggies and other products on the market. And one purpose of this use is to allow more crops in production for consumers like us to have to sell in the market that can be more efficient and more cost effective. So that in a way it's where the lab uses crops like corn to increase the quality of the food. So they use what we call in a way where DNA sequence changes in our body. They do the same thing in food. So with food, we eat almost the same factor of how the scientists are able to modify these. So what they're doing is they're editing their DNA in a way where it slows the production of crossbreeding between crops. So it's allowing it to last longer. So with GMO, you probably don't realize that you're consuming almost 92% and corns to 94% soybeans and 94% cotton. So in the US, these products we use, so it can range from clothing, it can range from meats, it can range from veggies and even fruits. So this percentage is an increase of 10% from the last updated, which was back in 2018. And that is wild to me because I'm like, we are going up there. Essentially, we're going to be at 100% if they keep this going. So this is would show you that a lot of our commercial grocery stores, maybe like Food Lion, Kroger, and so on, uses these same set of food organizations to get these products and for them to keep things on the shelves, which leads them finding themselves using it as a solution to keep food going, which obviously is definitely a good way of looking at it. But with the effects of the consumption has some pros and cons. So with GMO foods, we know that it's cost effective, right? And cheaper for us to buy, and that it claims to say it's more nutritionist. And when I say claims, it's because like, how do we know this? We're not all looking at our bodies and just saying, hey, by the way, how much nutrient or vitamin C do you have per day by eating this orange versus an organic orange? So based off of their studies is that they claim that it's more nutritionist. This way that make the way that they make the fruit bigger or the veggie, like, that's how they get the more nutrients because they're enhancing the size of a fruit. So there was actually one time I was in Kroger and I saw like an orange and it was almost the size of grapefruit. And which for me, it looked abnormal because of the ratio size. So with that claim, you would probably get more nutrients out of one orange that's been not modified versus the normal. But would that be too much of a change things rapidly for the body? So when I mentioned about DNA sequence, our body changes every time we consume anything. So The change of this thing that makes it rapidly for the body after consumption is my question to anyone out there that knows food from the roots and up. And let's speak on how the food industry obviously gives you the nutrition facts and everything and tells you like this gives you this type of benefits and vitamins or something. So we know like obviously oranges give us like vitamin C. But my big question for you guys, anyone out there listening, is like with something that is considered GMO that's bigger than what its average site is from a farmer's market versus one that's organic. Like, would it be more beneficial in a way where it's healthy from the inside versus on the outside, you know? Because physically it might be benefiting us, but on the inside, is it benefiting us? So that's like the burning question. So, with these benefits of like adding more nutrients and stuff, there are fewer pesticides where they alter to be less vulnerable to insects and other pests. So, for instance, there's crops that have a GMO, like corn, known as BT corn, has a gene added form, a soil bacteria that occurs naturally. With this gene, it can cause the corn to produce a protein that kills many pests and insects. So pesticides are anything that crawls into the fruit and just stays there. So with this type of chemical, it like essentially kills it. So that's essentially what they're saying in these topics of discussion about GMO, and which helps protect from damaging the crop. Because other claims that they would spray crops for the complex pesticides, and instantly when I hear this in my mind goes, why add this when people end up using other ingredients to clean fruit and veggies? So like we obviously wash our fruits and veggies every time we go to the store. Even though it says it's been washed, I still wash it because we don't know who's been touching that. We don't know how long it's been sitting out in whatever climate or element because people will decide not to get certain items. So that's besides the point. And getting anything out, because we know that when you cook something, the bacteria gets cooked, and that's what makes it less harmful. But when it's fresh and it's whole, that's a different story, right? So it gives you more questions than answers. And one of the big ones I find alarming is that it can lead to increased anti antibiotics. I say antibiotics resistance they have found by studying plant cells, that they added an additional genes that modify cells resistant to antibiotics, which would be used to kill off the plants, right? So when we think of like antibiotic resistance or any antibiotics, antibiotics essentially kill any type of like harmful bacteria. So obviously, with digesting anti-resistant genes does not always go away once digested. So GMO food causes this, and furthermore, let's be honest, the gut allows most things to go through technically, eliminate toxins and more. But with GMO, it can pass through. So we know like the gut is like a shallow organism or organ. So we try to think to ourselves, if every bacteria that comes from this fruit or this GMO food, what do you think is going to happen in your stomach, right? So let me tell you this, it's going to pass through your number two, and we all know what number two means, into a sewage system. So that could be like public service sewage system, and some experts worry that genes may be absorbed into harmful bacteria and could cause serious illness like staph infections, which is definitely dangerous. This is where the antibiotics treatment would be working against the new super bacteria. So in other words, it's a possible that this would be harmful, but because they think it's all under control, but I do believe that they should put some labels formation on it for us to know what we are actually buying and how the fruit was processed. Because let's be honest, I like to know the truth about what I'm eating because when I see something go from the market and back out from the market and then come back, it is hands down questionable to me. Or like a code, or speaking of a code, there is a number on each fruit and veggie. I learned this from someone. If you notice that the first number is usually a different product, have a special number like 4, it shows that it's been processed with some chemicals. So theoretically, you're probably eating GMO. And if it has a 9, it's showing to be organic. So keep that in mind when you go to the store. And I first was like having some doubt about that claim. But when I went to the store and like I shot both, just because it just, it varies. So with organic, I noticed that it does show a 9, and I noticed the regular fruits and veggies sometimes show a 4 and maybe even a different number. So depending on what process it went through, they're assigned a number. But these are the two numbers that from the source that I've heard this about. And I was like, okay, let me see this for myself then. So we know GMO has some benefits, but do they equal out to the concern is the question. Because it's always for debate with these kind of things, especially for ones that don't have the luxury to grow their own things or even go to a farmer's market and end up spending more. So like my mom tells me all the time, she's like, well, if you're concerned about the food, just grow your own thing. Yeah, but I live in an apartment right now. So how am I supposed to grow my own garden? And yes, I can go to Amazon or somewhere and get my indoor garden, but I want like a full on garden, not a small garden. So I will wait until I get my own house with my husband at that time. For now, we're going to just stick to maybe farmers market or even places that have less of these chemical stuff. And which at the end of the day is why would we pay more for something that is healthier? And that's always a big debatable but even though something that's healthy doesn't mean it's always beneficial. Keep that in mind while we think of the word organic. So, let's talk about organic now. So when we think of organic, people automatically think of the food that's more expensive and healthy, of course. And we would want to think that all the way, because I sure did. Because how everyone thinks of food industry, but learning about what the real meaning of what is on a label doesn't matter. Because, like I said before, they can pull it and then change it, and then you're like, wait a minute, this didn't say this at first. So if it didn't just come from your house or farmer's market, doesn't mean it's totally like consider like all the way healthy like they claim it. Cause like I've seen a company, I think it's Pop Poply or something like that. It's like a probiotic soda. So apparently their claims of it being like a gut healthy thing, but some of the ingredients and I guess the calorie intake or something was off, so they had to like do something to get it back to where it's supposed to be. Because like if you're putting something in the market that says, "Hey, this is gut free or grain free or organic or anything," you want us people that are purchasing this to actually know this is legitimate and not some fabricated. Because there's people out there that make their own stuff from scratch. Like yes, we have time to do that, and some of us doesn't. So I'm just like, okay. Because during my time in college, when I took a bio class, I asked my teacher what is the main difference between organic and non-organic, and she explained to me that one has rarely little to no chemicals. So let me keep this in mind. So I did not learn this until recently. Apparently, organic still has chemicals in it. It's just not as. potent as GMO. And which makes sense because if you're going to a grocery store, you have organic products and they're kind of like being rotated out from like the one that's been sitting there the longest, it makes sense. In other words, the non organic, she explained to me that one have rarely little to no chemicals and the other one has more and less chemicals, meaning that the organic is natural or related to natural. In other words, healthy or close to natural. It can also be described as food grown without artificial pesticides. So, unlike GMO, they use chemicals, same thing with organic, but the difference would be that they have to use only a certain amount for it to be considered organic. Otherwise, it wouldn't be organic or it would be going against their violation of that. So, if they're adding more than recommended to consider, so that why people who buy these products think it's more healthy. But of course, with food, if you think about fruit and veggies grown naturally and fresh without any of it, can only last a short period of time. So organic lasting longer causes it because it has the added chemicals seems to be more beneficial of having less grocery trips. But consider that organic, you have less to worry about any added chemicals and you know you're getting the real food profile of what you're eating on a day to day. Because most of the meals that we eat, which is probably supposed to be three, but some of us, like myself, I skip meals because I have a job where I'm kind of like working during the day, but then after work, it's kind of like I'm drained. And then I'm like, sometimes even when I wake up in the morning, I don't have time to make breakfast and I don't meal prep, which I should start doing. But hey, if anybody is good at meal prepping or knows how to start, let me know in the comments. So, of course, we are eating fruits and veggies and some grains. And now that the food industry got so complex, it makes it so much harder for you to keep up with all the products out there to see what is safe and what is not. Because with organic, although it doesn't have the chemical process it does with GMO, it does have a higher pesticide level, and which is understandable because with GMO there's not as much because of the chemicals, because it essentially kills it off. So with some people would be learning on the side of non-GMO, but with or leaning on the side of GMO, but with it being chemically altered or processed, that's where you would lean more on organic because the fact that technically, theoretically, organic is considered to be natural because the fact that it's grown naturally, it's in its own environment, it's using its own food source versus GMO, they're using the DNA of this fruit or veggie and they're enhancing it. So with organic, you have products that prevent allergies, unlike GMO. So that's one of the cons about GMO is that there are some allergies and even sensitivity affiliation, while organic does not. Plus, it helps with our overall health when it comes to our immune system, which is very important because obviously, when you get sick, what is the first thing most people get from the counters? They get their cold medicine, they get their cough drops, they get all these other medicines. Nobody thinks about, oh, let me eat this type of veggie or let me eat this type of fruit and make a dish that might benefit the same effect, like maybe uh, with like cold medicine does. But of course, that takes more time, and then that's effort. So you're kind of like in that rush to like get yourself better. But if you were to find products like organic products that does help with your immune system, then maybe you getting sick won't be so often. So where it's also with organic, it brings more nutrients and antioxidant and healthy fats and brings more vitamin intake in your veggies and fruit. So you get more in a natural way than a chemical way, is how I would put it. Because at the end of the day, we know now that both are cost effective and both have benefits than the other, or more benefits than the other, and that both can bring out nutritionists either way. So this is where I would leave it to you guys to decide what side you would say you're on and what side you're not on. If you're on the organic side, talk about the organic. If you're on the GMO side, let's talk about it. So, what is the big deal about all of this? For you to decide next time you go into a grocery store and how you want to get your food and what will make your overall health and gut happy. Because at the end of the day, I'm just here to give you some information where it's understandable to the public eye as well as to my viewers and my listeners. Because, come on, when we hear all these science terms and all these chemical compound stuff, it gets really confusing to the point where you're like, I feel like I'm back in the science class. So it's just kind of like I'm just here to like give you some interesting topics in regards of food and other things. And that's essentially what this series is about. So with people like myself who watch what kind of products they buy from the market to make sure we get the nutrients without having any problems in the future, would want more labels and let people know what is what. Because at the end of the day, like if you went to a grocery store and you saw something that says, "Hey, this has GMO," even though like the officials say that like they don't have to label non-organic or even organic stuff. Like some organic products are not labeled the way that they should, but they feel like they don't have the time. But there's people like me that like to just talk about it and even advocate about it and let people know what is the real deal, you know? And for us to tell you like to be more honest and allow people to have the updated answers that they come out that our peers have to answer rather than officials. And I just want to close this episode out by saying thank you for listening to Lex Gria's podcast. And I hope to see you tune into our final episode to close out this aspect of food knowledge and to bring out more talk about this in the future. And hope to see you again. For now, bye.